What's up guys, Aroneous here with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and in today's video I want to go over the new fusion that's coming up next week, and I want to give you my input as a free-to-play, 100% free-to-play player. I do have a pay-to-win account, but this is my free-to-play account. This is my main account. I mainly play on this Aroneous account, and I've been playing for a few years now, and I want to talk a little bit about the new guy named Hoskarul, or Hoskarul? Hosk for short, I guess. But looks like a really cool champion, so let me bring you over to him right now. Alright, so you can see behind me, we've got Hoskarul here, really good champion. Let me go ahead and move myself out of the way here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see this a little bit better. Hopefully you guys can read that okay, but we've got Hoskarul here. He's going to be a part of the Barbarians faction. He is an epic defense-based champion, so you know right off the bat that he is going to be tanky, right? So he should be tanky. We're hoping that he has at least, 1100 defense minimum. I'm hoping that he has good defense stats, at least 1100 minimum. If he doesn't have at least 1100, then that's not very good. But he is an epic champion, so you have to keep that in mind. He is a spirit-based champion, so he would do fairly well against certain dungeon bosses because he's a defense-based champion. So Barbarian, do we really need more Barbarians? That's one thing to keep into account. I don't really think we need too many more Barbarians. I mean, let's be honest, we've got tons of them at this point, like way too many Barbarians. But I guess it is what it is. They just love bringing in more and more Barbarians. I don't know, are people really struggling in the Barbarian crypt that badly? I don't understand it. Barbarians is like the easiest crypt, arguably. Yeah, leave it in the comments down below. I probably would wager that the Barbarians is the easiest crypt to beat in the game. Unless there's another one. Which other one would be the easiest? The second easiest? Either way, we'll move on here. So, on his A1, he's got Hermit Cudgel. Attacks one enemy, 30% chance of placing a stun debuff for one turn. And, of course, it does book up to 40% chance. That's not bad. Having that stun mechanic is very good for waves, would be very, very good for faction wars, of course, and good for Doom Tower progression as well if you need to use some CC champions, just in case you're having struggles on normal Doom Tower, or you need more help in hard Doom Tower. But by the time you can farm hard Doom Tower, a lot of times you probably already have Syl the Drakes. Syl the Drakes does really well, but you could pair this guy with Syl the Drakes and he would be even more helpful for CCing those waves and making sure you can get those waves stunned and they don't get any attacks on you at all, or just take turns in general. On the A2, Sustain Beating. I like how they put the cooldowns here, which is really nice. It's a 4-turn cooldown. It books down to a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks all enemies, 50% chance of placing a stun debuff for one turn. Decreases the turn meter of enemies under stun debuff by 15%. That's actually really good. It does book up to... That's so strange. Have you seen this before where plus 25% for a buff debuff chance on an epic? Usually you see 10%, 10%, or 5%, 5%, 10%. I don't know if I've ever seen a plus 25% before. I know that's kind of random, but maybe I have seen one before. I just don't recall the champions off the top of my head. But yeah, 75% chance is not terrible since he's only an epic-based champion. However, you do have other champions like Umbral Enchantress, who is a Void Epic. Harder to get, of course, but a Void Epic being able to stun, or rather, not stun, provoke for 2 turns. Which, in some cases, might be better than this. Now, this is a stun, where stuns, they can't attack you at all. So, stuns are technically better than provoke, but I guess it depends on where you're utilizing them. Provokes can work really good against Hydra, really good against Magma Boss, whereas Stun does nothing against Hydra, nothing against Magma Boss, so this is mainly for wave content so far. Also would be halfway decent as a potential spider tank. You can use him in stage 20 of spiders, I'm pretty sure, and he could be your tank if you needed him. You needed help tanking up those spiderling hits, because you could use Ultimate Death Knight if you have him, and then you can use this guy, stunning the spiderlings, and then decreasing their turn meters if he lands the stun, which would be very, very beneficial because I know Spider is probably one of the hardest dungeons for up-and-coming players that just haven't been playing the game for very long. This might be a helpful champion for you. He is going to be a Fragment summon, so Fragment summons are always easier. However, the last couple of Fragment summons for epics have been pretty challenging, and to be honest with you, they had for the shard pullings for like Summon Rush and for Champion Chase, they made the amount that you need to get for like a rare way higher than anticipated. So it made those epics very challenging to get, even though they were just epics. And typically epics are easier, but you shouldn't have to waste all your shards just for an epic. So if you are going to try to go for this guy, I really suggest earlier game accounts. However, if you're mid game or late game like myself, then I'm interested in going for him only because of his next ability. So the Unphase, which is on the A3. It's a 6-turn cooldown though, which is kind of annoying. I wish it was a 5-turn booked down to a 3, but it's a 6-turn, removes all stun debuffs from all allies, then places a 60% increased defense buff, which is very nice. The increased defense is helpful. Plus 25% increased resistance buff on all allies for 2 turns. I think that's the first time that we've seen an increased resistance buff that's going to be on an epic champion for the first time in the game. I do not believe there's any increased resistance on any other champions that are epic in the game. You can correct me in the comments down below if I'm wrong, but I do not believe there's another epic champion in the game currently that has increased resistance. So that's actually pretty massive, because you can utilize this guy against the Bommel boss, especially on normal. If you just have this guy on Bommel boss for normal, you could easily farm normal Bommel, because he's not going to be placing nearly as many bombs on your champions when your champions are attacking Bommel and then get a bomb placed on them. But if you have high enough resistance, you don't get a bomb placed on you if you place a debuff on Bommel, because I think Bommel's passive is that if you place a debuff on him, you automatically get a bomb on yourself unless your resistance is high enough. So that's actually a really good ability. It is the weaker version of increased resistance. I think the strong version is 50%. Let me actually show you. I think there's another champion. I'll show you afterwards another champion that has a large version of increased resistance. It's a legendary champion though, and a lot harder to come by, and not a lot of people out there that I'm aware of have him and or use him that I'm aware of. If you do know who it is off the top of your head, leave it in the comments down below. You can edit that comment later on once you see fit. So increased resistance is fantastic. It's also going to be very helpful for Hydra, right? So Hydra is, you require a certain amount of resistance, and if you're mid game or early game and you need more resistance against Hydra because he's placing those provokes, placing those decreased attacks, placing other things that you just don't want on you as a debuff like weaken, things like that, and causes you to die faster, then you could go for this guy. He places that increased resistance. Therefore, if you get your champions to about, let's say, 250 resistance, and you have an increased resistance on there by 25%, 10% of 250 is 25, times that by 2, that's 20%, and then by another about 12.5, so that's about 65 additional resistance or so. I'm just trying to do the math in my head here, but it's about 65 resistance if you just have 250 resistance on your champions. So that's 315 or so resistance that you would have. Plus, if you have Rector Drath, she has the passive to place increased resistance for every Perfect Veil on a champion, so that's an additional 50. So you're talking about 360 resistance right there. So very good for Hydra, in my opinion, to keep resistance up. I don't like this ability only because it's a 4-turn cooldown, whereas it would be much better on a 3-turn cooldown. So that can be a pain. However, we do have those sets in the game like, you know, Reflex and Relentless. So Reflex and Relentless could be very beneficial for this guy, because if he's constantly taking turns and using Unphase, increased defense and increased resistance on your allies, hopefully the ally that has the most buffs, that gets targeted by that annoying head that steals the buffs from the ally with the most buffs, hopefully they'll just go ahead and resist. Right? So if you have like Umbral Enchantress paired with this guy, Umbral you put with 300, or maybe you can only get her to like 280 resistance, and then you put this guy in, increase resistance, now boom, now her resistance is almost at like 350 or so, which is the right amount you need for like normal Hydra. So this guy could be very beneficial, and yeah, so you need around 350 to 450 resistance. I think it's 350. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please leave in the comments down below. I think it's around 350 to 400 resistance you need for normal Hydra, so you don't get the buff stripped. I believe it's 350. but if I'm wrong, definitely leave it down in the comments. And so yeah, so I think he would be a great champion, a great addition for a Hydra team roster. And then on his passive, Finish the Foe, immune to stun debuffs, which is fantastic because you can also bring him into, of course, wave content, and then you can also use him in arena, right? So if you use him in arena, he's going to be immune to those champions that you're going up against that place stuns, and especially like legendary champions. Still the Drakes for one places stuns, but if he's immune to stun and you see a lot of people in gold 1, gold 2, gold 3 trying to place stuns on you, now they can't do it. He also increases the damage inflicted by all allies by 15% when attacking enemies under stun debuffs. So if he stuns the enemies and then your team, so he would be the type of person where you want him to go as fast as possible. You don't want him to be too slow. I don't think this guy is going to be a damage dealer, but I could be wrong. I feel like he's going to be mainly utilized as support and speed, making him go as fast as possible. He also has an aura for faction crypts for 30%, which is fantastic. So I don't think he's going to be hitting hard. I could be wrong on that, but I just feel like he's going to be a tank, and I think that he's going to have to go really fast, get him at least 3,000 plus defense. If you can get a lot more, which some people out there can, do that. Make him go as fast as possible, get him up over 200 speed. He's going to be insane, especially for waves. So not a bad champion. Now let me bring you back and let me showcase to you a champion that I wanted to show you earlier that I talked about that has the big version of increased resistance. So let me go ahead and do that now. Alright, so this champion that I was talking about is in the Dwarf faction crypt, the Dwarf faction, and so the champion is Beauregard. So Beauregard is a pretty good champion. Let's see what he's got for reviews so far. He actually has some pretty good reviews in arena defense, because increased resistance is kind of meta right now for arena defense. Having crazy high stats like tankiness and having crazy high resistance with Mithrala, that's kind of the meta right now, especially in high gold 5, especially in tag team arena. People are building slower and slower teams to try to combat those stronger nuking teams, because they can, a lot of times nuking teams, their main thing is to speed up, decrease defense, CC, and then nuke, or speed up, CC, decrease defense, nuke, you know, a multitude of different items. Sometimes they just do blender teams, but there are a lot of teams that can protect now against those blenders because they have high resistance, high defense, and high HP. So having a combination of those three things is going to be super beneficial on like a go second team, with Mithrala especially. Beauregard is really good too. So he has a shield on all allies for 2 turns equal to 20% of this champion's max HP, 50% increased resistance buff, and a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns, which is really good. And allies receive 10% less damage from champions whose resistance is lower than or equal to theirs. So that's pretty sweet too. So having this guy paired with like Beauregard or Hoscarel, so Beauregard and Hoscarel in Hydra teamed up together, could you imagine the synergy on that? And increases ally resistance by 50 in all battles, so that's not crazy, but that's okay. So he's not a bad champion. So that's, I think, the only other person. Maybe Nari the Lucky. I don't think he does it. So Nari the Lucky does decrease resistance. He does not do increase resistance. But the annoying part about this is that he has to have high enough accuracy to even land this. So I wish this was unresistible. That would have been freaking fantastic. Like if this was unresistible, then Nari the Lucky just went through the roof in regards to a rating, especially against Mithrala. Like I would have loved to see this guy be, you know, boosted and get a buff, because right now he's just not that great. I'll be honest with you. He's okay. He's just not that great. He needs a little bit more. Yeah, Faction Wars, that's to be expected. He's going to have good ratings in Faction Wars, but I mean, he's not that great. He's okay against Hydra, but again, I don't really see a lot of people using this guy or talking about this guy in Hydra or other areas of the game, to be honest with you. I'm going to try my best to start upgrading him at some point and see where I can slot him in. Most likely I'm going to try to utilize him in like defense for arena, Hydra for sure, to lower the resistance on Hydra or decrease the accuracy on Hydra. But again, if that's all he's bringing to the table and then a simple counterattack, it's not that great. Maybe his counterattack should be on all allies, or he just needs to do more damage, because right now he's not that strong. So, in my opinion, at the end of it all, I think that Hoskarol will be a good champion to benefit most early to mid-game accounts. Late game and end game accounts, will it benefit me? A little bit, not a ton. I think it will actually help in defense for Arena, because if I can get a team comp situated around him and increase resistance, that's the other thing to think about, is like if you have to focus on re-gearing champions to fit around one champion that's actually a lower level than most, in this case he's an epic, not a legendary, then it might be just a waste of your time and resources. Like for me as a free-to-play player, and for those out there as free-to-play players, if you're wasting all your resources just to try to get one person to work on a defense team, then it might not be worth it. So the small version of increased resistance, it does kind of stink, but it's better than nothing. It's going to benefit people's accounts. Let me know what you guys think though in the comments down below. Are you going to be going for Hoskarol, or are you thinking this guy's just an easy skip and you're going to save your resources until the fusion that's upcoming in December? Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.